I might be repeating myself, which is okay, but what I really hope is that I'm not confusing anybody. So let's go over the atrial tachycardia and the atrioventricular nodal reentry tachycardia. And you're going to remember that with the atrial tachycardia and the atrioventricular AV NRT, all those PQRSs are going to look the same. In the atrial tachycardia, the P is sometimes going to be buried in the T, which is going to make the T look funny. There's going to be a normal and narrow QRS. But the AV NRT, it's always going to look the same. The P will sometimes be buried in the QRS, and the QRS will be distorted. You won't even see a T in this AV NRT. But as you can imagine, if it's going 250 beats a minute, you'll be hard-pressed to find a T even if it was there. So you're not going to see it. So the P is there, it's just inside of the QRS. And then the QRS, even though there's a P inside of it, it's still going to be narrow. It's just going to be a little distorted. I know this sounds funny, but if you Google it, Google the images, hopefully you can see what I'm talking about and I'm not confusing you. And if I am, don't listen to me. Ask your teachers. Okay. So I told you about the atrioventricular reentry tachycardia. Oh, no, okay. So there's the atrioventricular nodal reentry tachycardia. Then there's the atrioventricular reentry tachycardia. People they just be doing too much. This rhythm starts above the ventricles, but it doesn't go through the AV node. Because of this, it activates the ventricle sooner. So if you can imagine a normal pathway, it's not going through that center part, the AV node or the bundle. So it's kind of like, seems like it's like going around. But that AV node kind of like, it's like a blocker. Like if you think of like a linebacker, it's kind of like the linebacker of the heart. It's making sure the atrium is not doing too much. So it kind of holds it and then lets them go. Holds it and then lets them go. So that way you have this regular, normal rate. Now this atrioventricular reentry tachycardia, I guess the other one is called nodal because it's actually going through the AV node. This one is not called nodal because it's not going through the AV node. It's completely going around. So now because it's completely going around, it's going to look all funky and it's going to have like a ridiculously short PR interval. It's going to be less than 1-2 seconds because it's not going through that AV node. Your P wave will be normal. I guess in this one there's going to be a little bit of a delta wave, which people don't talk about a lot, but it's like you got this really short distance from the P to the QRS, and then right before the QRS, but at the end of the P, it's going to kind of go upside down. It's going to go below that isoelectric line. That's like, I guess, a delta wave. I guess it can go below or above. Impress somebody with that, you know. Oh my God, this person has atrioventricular reentry tachycardia. Can't you tell by the delta waves? They'd be like, oh my God, where'd you go to school? That's that rhythm. Now you have atrial flutter. That's one of my favorite type of rhythms because it's so easy to recognize. A lot of people say it looks like a sawtooth. It just looks like you got a bump, 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 and then a QRS. Bump, 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 and a QRS. It's pretty much easy to see because it's very, to me, it's very smooth and regular. So you do have types of A flutter. People be doing too much. This is why you have cardiologists, because they're doing too much. You could just study EKG. You have your type 1 flutter. That's reentry, and it's 250 to 350 beats per minute. I've never seen a 350 beat per minute rate, but this is what the book says. I don't know where they got that rate from. Obviously, you want to consult your cardiologist. You don't want to treat that on your own. And that one you're going to do a synchronized cardioversion. The type 2, I guess your type 1 is the one that I was talking about, that it looks clear like a bump, 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 QRS, bump, 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 QRS. And then you have your type 2, I guess, which is going to look similar to an AFib, and there's no direct correlation between the atrial and the ventricular rate. So I guess on the type 1, there's like 3 to 1 QRS, 3 to 1 QRS, and the type 2, there's no real correlation. That one often leads to AFib, as you can probably see why. because it's all over the place and there's no real connection. Those people will typically get calcium channel blockers or beta blockers. Cardizem, diltiazem is like normal, but you want to avoid beta blockers if they have severe pulmonary disease or heart failure. You're gonna do a synchronized cardioversion if these people are symptomatic. So next on the list is the atrial fibrillation. That one's okay, but sometimes it can kind of look like a flutter, so that can make it difficult. But that one, you'll see regular QRSs. They will have no relation to your P waves, and you won't really see a real P wave. It'll be real crunchy and cruddy looking, and it won't even really have a real rhythm. That's because the top of the heart is just, it's literally quivering just like that, and that's what the lead is measuring. There are several ways to control this. You want to think of rate control or rhythm control. A lot of times rate control I think of as something that they do if rhythm control doesn't work. Everybody shoots for rhythm control first. Rhythm control is, of course, where you're going to reestablish sinus. Now, you can do that with the cardia version, or you can do that with medications. But it doesn't always work, like I said. So if the rhythm control doesn't work, then you're going to go for the rate control, and that's where they stay in AFib. Many people do just live in an AFib, but the ventricular rate is controlled. Decrease the symptoms, so that way they can kind of live, decrease ischemia, and it'll decrease or help with any previous heart failure. If they're having an atrial fibrillation and they're really showing signs and symptoms of being affected by that rate, you're going to do a cardioversion. You're going to put the pads on them and you're going to pop. They're going to love it. Next, junctional rhythms. I'm actually going to do this on a different one. So this is going to end my atrial arrhythmias. So remember, you always want to look for, where's your P? I remember people saying that to me in class, and I thought, that's stupid. I'm not doing it that way. And now here I am saying that's one of the most important things you want to do, because you want to know where's your P, what's it doing. Is there a QRS coming after your P? Is that QRS wide or is it narrow? Is that P coming all the time? Is there like a P, 3 P's, and then a QRS? All that good stuff. What's my P to P? What's my P to R? Remember, your P to P is clearly the P to the peak, and it's actually like the peak of the P to the peak of the P. Your P to R, remember, is the beginning. As soon as the thing leaves the isoelectric line and starts to go up, boom, that's right where your P starts. And as soon as your QRS complex begins, that's the end of your, that's my P, yeah, that's my PR. That's the P to R right there. And you want to measure that, and it's 0.12 to 0.20 is normal. All right.